And hi, everyone. TJ All's I-45 now, and welcome to yet one of our other forums as we cover our community across the Clear Lake and Galveston County areas. And we focus tonight on the eve of early voting starting up for the May 6th election, the Nassau Bay City Council candidates. We have 3 of the 4 that are in contested races here tonight, joining us tonight. The candidates running for position 1 include Paula Tomasi and Micheli. Michelle, welcome back, by the way. Michelle ran a couple years ago, was on, or last year, right?
Last year, yes.
Was on with us with that. And then one of the 2 candidates running for position 5, Sarah Horton, is joined us here as well. And we should point out that we did invite the other position 5 candidate, Michelle Barecky, to come. We invited several times, never got a response to that. So we're going to go ahead and go forward with this. Before we get going here, a couple of things. I always like to be transparent and point this out ahead of time. I am a Nassau Bay resident, I should point out, and know these 3 from around town. Well, I knew Paula back when she was on the Clear Creek ISD school board back in the day. I'm not going to date us both there, Paula. But along the lines, too, just as I say, is always fair. We love this community we live in as well. I'm here, so in this case, my capacity as a journalist. But I should point out, just full disclosure here, that Sarah does a volunteer project we're big supporters of, which is making sure the duck feeders are filled. And we donate bags occasionally for that. But it's all about the ducks and the geese on our end. So, ladies, thank you for coming on board with us here today, and I appreciate it. We are obviously going to be going through a lot of topics. Keep it under, we're trying to do the question and answers in about 45 minutes. And then at the end, allow all 3 of you to give up to 3 minutes for your closing speech. And on that, I'm going to write down a number here. I like to do this live so everybody sees what I'm doing here. But this is the way how we kind of determine how we're going to get this done. So I'm thinking of a number between 2 and 10, and whoever picks the number closest without going over gets to pick what order they go in when we wrap things up at the end. You can go first, second, or third there for your elevator speech. So, Paul, I'm going to give me a number between 2 and 10.
6, please.
Okay. Michelle?
8.
8. All right. And Sarah?
I'll go with 3.
3. All right. So as hopefully you can see on the screen here, let me make sure it gets in there. There's the number 7.
Okay.
That's what I picked. So Paula, you are the one who got closest without going over. What order would you like to go in at the end?
Last, please.
All right. And I believe, Michelle, you picked which number again? I'm sorry, it was
number 8.
8. So you're over. So I got to give Sarah the chance first. So Sarah, where would you like to go, first or second at the end?
I'll go second.
All right. Michelle, that just leaves 1 position left there. So we'll have you go third. But however, what that also means is you get the first question first to go through on that. So that works out to be a benefit for all. And again, if you do have questions, you can submit them by comments. If they fall into the categories that we're doing, they're not direct gotcha questions. We may use those throughout the night as well. But we've vetted a lot of these already. But let's get into one that's really fresh on the minds of a lot of the viewers, particularly voters in Nassau Bay. And this is fresh news. On Thursday, we found out that the interim city manager had informed the city that, hey, I can't do this full time. He was already coming a couple of days. And this comes right on the heels of Paul McClarty, who cited a conflict of interest because of a relationship he had with a city staffer. Nothing untoward about that, just that he said, hey, I can't supervise someone that's in this position. Resigned from his position just a few months ago. So, Michelle, let me just start with that. When you heard the news that the interim or acting city manager, who was already only just here a few days a week, decided, listen, I can't, balance everything and come in here. That's what the mayor had said. We've heard other things. First on that, do you think that just kind of sends, some concern out there that there may be some rancor between city management and council? Or do you think it's just that it was just a timing thing?
No, I definitely think it's a concern. I mean, I don't understand why the city that we are not able to keep a city manager. I don't understand why we went from the issues that we had with the previous city manager to then Paul McCarty to now this particular city manager. I just think that as a city, if we're all working together, it should work out. And I don't understand why there's so much turnover and turmoil between the city manager and the city or the council members or, city hall. I just don't understand that. So I wouldn't think we're that complicated that somebody could not handle or give the time unless they were actually not they're not able to do what they're supposed to do because other people are not letting them do what they need to do for the city.
One of the things may have been, and I'm going to ask this of everyone when we get around to it, but Michelle, let me stay with you on this, is that when this resignation had happened, and he's staying on as I should point out that he's staying on as a contract, but won't be at City Hall doing the day-to-day in any capacity. Police Chief Tim Cromie has stepped up again in that position. But still, what we discovered was he was only coming in 2 or 3 days a week in that position. Do you think that's a concern too, that was allowed to happen instead of having someone in that position, even if it's an interim, to be here most days to make sure the city is running well on the day-to-day?
I mean, 100%. I mean, especially with what we just came out with the previous city manager, I think that we need somebody full-time and somebody that's going to be fully dedicated. And for us to just patch it with somebody that's just going to come in a couple of days a week, I mean, are they really getting to know the needs of the city, or are they really able to cover everything that needs to be done? And I mean, I feel bad for Mr. Crummy, because he's having to, keep stepping up and double his duties. And like we all know, I mean, there's so much bandwidth that we all have, and there's so much that we can handle. And, the poor guy can't catch a break because he keeps having to cover multiple roles. And, then you're not really focused at the one thing that you're really good at because you're trying to cover different areas and things fall through the wayside. And that's when, problems become, apparent at that time. So
All right. Same questions to you, Sarah, on that is, when you found the news, but also to, as it's sending a bad image out there, but also to this kind of discovery afterwards that the interim or acting, whatever title they want to use there, city manager wasn't here on a full-time basis anyway, but is still going to be working basically from home to say what's going on. What are your views on how that should be handled, Sarah?
I think that the problem we've had is we've had a really hard time keeping a city manager clearly. I mean, this has happened, it happened even before we had Paul McClarty. We lost Jason Reynolds. And I think that was maybe a little different situation. I'm not sure. But these 2 interim city managers in a row, we're just not able to hold on to them. And I think it's because council is not following the city charter, and they're not city charter explicitly says that city council members are to not give directives to city employees, and that they're to go through the city manager for all things. And I think what we're finding is that the city managers are getting frustrated because maybe their role is not being respected, or they're trying to take care of the employees of the city, and that's their job, but also they have to follow what council says in a way, right? And council's in a way in charge, they can get rid of them. So I think that they're finding it's a very hard line to walk with this council. And I think that they're finding it's an impossible walk. And so what I'm hoping for is that we start to allow the city managers to really do their job. And we hire the most competent and clever city manager we can find, and sometimes defer to them on things, and allow them to make decisions for the city. If you read the city charter, the city manager has a lot of power too, and it's supposed to be almost kind of a checks and balances. And I'm hoping that if we can, I'm a little worried that we're becoming kind of we've got egg on our face right now in the local community, and that we're going to have a hard time finding someone if we keep losing people. Mm-hmm. So that's my greatest concern right now. And I'm really hoping that, if we can get some good people on council that are more closely adhering to charter, and kind of holding everybody to it, and we can have better conversations and go in a positive direction.
And I'll ask you the same quickly. The follow-up question is that, the understanding when we, find out Thursday about this, I found out actually from Chief Cromie myself, because we were at an event together. But it gives into a concern here for some people I've seen. I want to see if it's for you as well, that to find out as it was, is that the Stafford was only in here, the acting city manager was only coming in like 2 or 3 days a week to begin with. Do you think that was a poor decision on the city council's part, or is it they had to make a decision quick and get somebody in?
I think they tried to find someone quickly, and I think that they didn't think about the fact that this, I don't know, maybe they thought that his other obligations were not as time consuming, or maybe there was a misunderstanding there. My concern is also financially, this is costing the city some money. We have these contract, interim city managers, and it's, contract employees always cost more than a salaried employee. So we're paying more for somebody that's really, I guess, was doing kind of part-time work, and I found out the job was a lot more extensive than maybe he thought it was. And, and then we lose them, but then apparently we're holding on to them and letting them complete their contract and still paying them while, they're not here, and Chief Cromie's got all the duties. So the expense there is also a concern for me,
Right. Paul, and we're going to get into a little bit more on this as well, just about the views of where you would like to see, because if any of y'all win the election, you'd be on the council that's most likely going to hire the new city manager. Paula, same question to you regarding the recent incidents that happened with the interim city manager.
I was shocked. I actually met with Brad some time ago when he first came on board. I felt that he had clear boundaries, which was important to me, and he was aware of what he was coming into. So when this came about so quickly, it leads me to real concerns. I understand that interim people work in some positions when you can't find a full-time position and you need to get a job done. So although I didn't like that he was part-time, I felt, especially after I met with him and talked to him, that he had the confidence to do what we needed him to do, and that is set clear boundaries and run the city. So when it came about quickly, I was surprised. I would like for the city to have found a full-time person, but I don't want the city to hire somebody that they're not confident in, and then it goes away. So I felt that Brad had the city's confidence, and I am surprised that he left. I didn't get the feeling that he had any intention of not being here on site, solving the problems a number of days a week. No, not full time, but a number of days a week. And for him to learn at such short notice that it wasn't what he perceived, and he decided to make a major change, I am concerned.
And in all fairness, I want to point out, Mayor Phil Johnson did answer some questions online concerning this, saying that Brad would be working, still working with the city. He just wouldn't be coming in day to day. That Chief Cromie would be handling those duties. So I want to get, he's still under contract with the city until such time as either that contract is severed or a new city manager is hired. So we want to be fair on that. But Paul, let me stay with you for a second and give you all a chance to comment on something Paula said when you said that he set boundaries. I wonder if you can elaborate on what do you mean by that, and how that plays into your philosophy, if elected, how you would handle things as a member of council. And I'm going to go to Michelle and Sarah after this with y'all's answers on this too.
The rules, the regulations, the FEMA regulations, the charter, our laws are very clearly state what needs to be done. If we try to operate without a city manager, we put our employees at risk. We certainly don't want to do that. So we do want to have a city manager, but I think we need to be careful with who we hire. With the division in Nassau Bay, it's pretty clear to me that some residents feel that council members overstep their boundaries. And a city manager who has strong boundaries will say, no, wait a minute. Let's look at how this is really supposed to be handled and try to do it correctly. I don't know that that's happened in this instance, but I do think that Brad had clear boundaries. And I think that is absolutely critical for a city that operates the way we do, with the charter, with city council, and the functions that we need to perform as council members. I think we need to stay on our own highway as council members. We do not need to be getting into the business of telling employees, volunteers what to do. We need an evaluation system that clearly reports to council how everybody is doing, how everybody's feeling, whether it's a survey with our volunteers. We need systems in place that tell council.
And we're going to get to the volunteer portion here in a little bit. This is about the city manager. Sorry, I'll let they go there. And I'll let you fix your sign when we put Michelle up on screen now. For that. But Michelle, same question to you regarding this, because, something Sarah said earlier, this may not have been such a concern if we didn't have the succession of events. The Jason Reynolds departure, which got very political and rough. Then after that, Paul McClarty's exit, which was public, and then some of his comments afterwards, and then now this. But I just want to get a take on what I just asked Paula to kind of elaborate on. Is this thought process that there's kind of more of a hands-on approach from council on the day-to-day, and those boundaries that she mentioned about the city manager had with council?
I mean, I totally agree with Paula. I mean, I don't know what the city council, has a hold on some people, but I mean, I think that the city manager should be able to do what they need to do. And I think city council kind of has, crossed that lane, and they just seem to want to try to take over everything. When I ran last year, I had city council family members calling me, telling me that I should not be running this year, that I should wait another year to run because I was not going to win. And so, I don't understand what the hold is of this particular city council, or some of the members of city council, that they have over the city and over, people that live here. So I think that I agree with Paula. I think they definitely need to stay in their lane. I agree that there's some oversight that needs to be done, but you just can't be the rule all of everything. There has to be, you have to work together. There has to be some compromise.
Sarah, same question to you on this regarding the fact of a interim and full-time city manager holding up the boundaries, per se. And we're going to stay with you as I do a follow-up on this as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's what I would hope for is, and I think that's what any hardworking person wants to do, is they want to have boundaries, and they want to do what's best for their employees. City manager, it's like I said, it's a tricky road to walk for them, because they're really the filter between city council and the city employees. And the charter says city council cannot give directives to city employees, that everything has to go through the city manager, but that's there as protection to the employees, and I just really think that, I don't know if it's because we've lacked a city manager on and off for the last several years, we've kind of gone bouts without it. And so maybe council's gotten comfortable with maybe, giving directives to city employees without the city manager, or I'm not sure why. I agree with Michelle a little bit. We're in a city where there's been a certain element of the council that's kind of controlled the council for a long time. And sometimes, fresh ideas and new ideas are good things. And, bringing in new education and experience is a good thing. And I'm really hoping that, with my law background, that I can really make sure that we stick to following charter and organization, I guess you could say.
Right. Well, and it does become a concern again, as I said, maybe this is an isolated incident just because sometimes that happens. I know of, hey, listen, I've hired people who once they get on the job realize, hey, this is not really, I thought I could do it, but I couldn't, and they've gone on. And that may have been the situation here too, when you have mutual demands of what your current job is, because it's not like Brad ever quit his job. But then when you have it on the heels of the Paul McClarty situation and the heels of the Jason Reynolds situation, that's a whole different thing. Sarah, I'm going to stay with you on this. Obviously, whoever wins in these elections here will be making a decision on the next full-time. And we may use that with a caveat, with an asterisk next to it when we say full-time city manager. What are you looking for, Sarah? And I'm going to ask the same questions of each of you here. What are you looking for when it comes to the right person to be the city manager for Nassau Bay?
I think somebody with, education, extensive experience, and somebody with thick skin, I think is what it's going to take, quite honestly. Somebody that's, willing to push back on some things and, they're just not going to just be a rubber stamp. Somebody that looks out for the people of the city and the city itself, as opposed to the viewpoints of, council members. And, council has several members. There's people from all walks of life on council. And, it's good to bring the diversity of ideas, but the city manager also knows how to run the city. So, and if we have somebody with extensive experience, then that will be so helpful in guiding us forward. I'm just a little worried about, with our history recently, I'm just worried that it's going to be hard for us. And I just hope that we're able to find the right fit, that somebody that'll stick around and kind of know that there might be some tough times.
You brought up a good point. And I'm going to ask this as a follow-up of Paula and Michelle when I get around to them on this question too. But you said about, that if someone's overstepping their bounds, a city manager who will, set up boundaries or push back. I mean, just ask, you get elected and there's a big project you want to have and it's not moving as fast as it can or anything like that, and the city manager pushes back against you. What's your reaction to that?
Well, I am a person that I'm good at listening. So I would be like, explain to me why. And then if they had a very good reason why, then I would totally understand. It's something that it's when you reach a certain professional level in life, you get to a level where you understand that listening is just as valuable as speaking. And I really think that if we hire someone that has all the experience that I'm hoping for, that I would defer to them on some things for sure.
Right. Paula, same question to you. And I would like you to kind of compare it, if you would, because you got a unique skill set here of this, because you've been in this position somewhat because you had a superintendent that had to answer to the body at one point when you're in your first elected life. But kind of talk about this though, is first, the question is, what are you looking for in the next full-time city manager for Nassau Bay? And then the second part of that is just what I talked about with Sarah, on that, the pushback thing, because that we saw with Jason Reynolds, the situation was really, there was what many on council felt was too much pushback, particularly the mayor at the time. And that they just felt that it wasn't, there was this kind of discourse that couldn't get healed. But I wanted to ask you the same question. You get you get something, you get a pushback from a city manager on something that you think is more of a council will than your own individually. How would you react to that? But first, let's start. What are you looking for when those candidates are coming in to be interviewed for the city manager full time?
Boundaries first. Ability to set boundaries for themselves and for the policies that are available and used by the city. And that includes all of the regulations, whether it's the building department and FEMA regulations, the building department and codes. We need somebody that can understand how we operate. Starting with our charter, and he needs to, or she needs to be able to say, look, this is the way it goes, and I'm the manager, and I think this is how we're going to do it. If there's something that we don't like, the council sets an agenda. the council is the one that sets the tool of evaluation. The council is the body that says we would like to see an answer at this time. We'd like this worked on in this time frame. So there are things that the council can do. However, you hire somebody that you trust, second thing, outside of boundaries, that will defend the city, defend the residents, defend the volunteers, defend the businesses in our community. And so then you have to trust that his ideas need to be strongly considered. And again, if we all stay in our lane, things can get done. There could be issues that a city council member wants to see, but it always takes a vote of council. Issues that the city councils can be discussed should come in an open session, posted meetings, posted minutes, following regulations. And
we're going to get to that government transparency
okay,
issue
good.
here in a little bit. Yeah, don't worry. I didn't mean to cut you off again, but we're getting another topic. I know it's coming up.
Hey.
Michelle, same question to you here is, what are you looking for in the next full-time city manager position? And also, if you were faced with a situation in which something you felt that the council was pushing for and there was pushback from the city manager, how would you handle that and react to it?
Well, so I agree with both of the ladies and their comments. I mean, I think we just need somebody that can just help us grow as a city, first and foremost, and somebody that can take into consideration, I mean, the young families that are moving in, the elderly that's still in the city. I think it's just really important that we work together as a city as a whole. I just think that there's a lot of division, and it's going to make it hard for any city manager to come in and fight that constantly all the time. So I think they need to just be prepared, and they need to be prepared for the fight. And I think if I had an idea, if I was ever elected and there was a bit of a pushback, I have that same open mind like Sarah does. I mean, I'm a good listener as well. And I think it's good to just collaborate with ideas, and maybe they have a better solution, and maybe there's a happy medium, and maybe I can get some of what I want and what they want. But we just have to work together. I just think more than anything else, there's just a big division, and we're just not going to grow. And like Sarah mentioned earlier, it's a little bit disheartening that, we're being looked at as a city that it's not able to keep a city manager, or we're having all these issues and all these problems. I mean, we're a small city. I know we're not a super small city, but at the same time, we should be able to work through it, and we should be able to get the best candidate and somebody that everybody can work with. And again, when you work in a big group setting, when you work in a big company, not everybody agrees with everything, but you have to learn to make it work in order to make it a success at the end of the day. And we are here for the people, and they're the first ones we have to, the people and the kids. I'm all about the kids. And so, we have to work together. We can't just be divided.
And this will be really just kind of with all of y'all on screen here to kind of share these views on that. It's, again, as I said earlier, if we didn't have the series of things that had happened in the city, we may not be talking about this as much of a concern. I will say this, just to be fair here, is that, having covered every community in this region for 25 plus years, is that it seems like every little town, gets on the wheel at some point, as I say, the wheel of controversy that goes around and the like. We've seen it in Chemo, seen it in Dickinson already right now too. Plus here, I mean, I granted they're in a different county and down the road, but it's the line that that a politician, a mayor, I should say, of a small town told me many years ago. The great thing about living in a small town is you live in a small town. Mm-hmm. The worst thing about living in a small town is you live in a small town. And that kind of defines itself in many ways. There, Paula. Now let's get off the city manager thing, and I'm going to get with you first. And if y'all don't mind, I'm going to keep this up with all of us on the screen at all times. I think that works out better for everyone for the format here. One of the things is that's kind of tied to what we're talking about here is open government and transparency. Here, seems to be a bigger issue. Now, there's one side is folks, they don't think council is doing enough in the open, or at least giving reasons for things, and think there's too much happening in behind the scenes. Then you have the other scene, I can't dismiss what the mayor brought up about, the number of open records requests that are just coming into the city secretary's office, particularly when you have someone new in that position. I say new for Nassau Bay. I know Zena Tedford back in the days when she was the city manager on the city, city secretary, city clerk, actually, in Lamarck, and is fine. She's a hard worker. But on the open government side, how would you rate the transparency and openness of government based on what you're seeing now? And if you're elected, how do you go about, changing it, keeping it the same, strengthening it? Let me just ask you straight up that, Paula.
We don't know what goes on in open sessions, but there are legal guidelines for what should go on in open session. And I would like to adhere to those guidelines. I think if we can discuss it in open session, we should. If it's something that's a legal liability, a personnel issue that somebody doesn't want discussed in open session as in an employee conflict, then it needs to go to closed session. I think committees, how we select them, who's in line, who's applied, that those are open session issues. And it concerns me that they're not. It was concerning to me that minutes weren't found in a timely manner. And I understand everybody's busy, but people want to know, and they should know. I believe that most business should be conducted in a regularly scheduled meeting. We shouldn't have, did we meet the 72-hour? Did we not meet the 72-hour notice for a new meeting? If we have our business at the normally scheduled meetings, more people will know. It will be more transparent. There will be more trust. I'm also very much in favor of technology. People can't attend the meetings at all times. People travel, work, whatever. They need to be able to see it somewhere. And so I like to see the minutes posted, but I like to see the meetings televised. I think that's a great step for our city. I'll encourage that. I'll encourage the council members to have the single meetings, have the open sessions being available and covered, the closed session. You can get pretty specific by saying it's a personnel issue and people will understand. So I think those issues contribute to trust. And that's what I think we need right now. We need trust. I don't really believe that people want to do the wrong things. My goal is to be a unifying factor and to do the right thing. If I see something that I don't like, I'm going to speak up. So that kind of is my promise to people, that I will not shy behind this person doesn't want me to do, that person doesn't want me to do, this volunteer wants me to do. I've served on the school board, like you said, for 10 years, president twice, and I understand what we need for good governance. We have a lot of things to do in Nassau Bay, and people need to believe that we're doing the right thing first. And so I think we need to be very careful about those issues of transparency. It's not just a word. It's something that we desperately need.
And I should point out here too, just to kind of explain some of the comments you made here for folks, the meetings within 72 hours. There was a special called meeting that was supposed to happen, I think Thursday night. It was Thursday night. And there was some question of whether or not it got posted in time. But it was one of those things where what was on the agenda didn't seem to be an emergency situation or something like that. And that becomes, that became a questionable. It got canceled. And because there were questions about that. The other to kind of point out is that the state law does allow for, if you're going to appoint someone to a committee, it's treated like a personnel matter, even though it's a volunteer or city committee in this point, and it's an appointment. They do allow that discussion to be held in executive session if the body so wants to. The big thing there is that the law says may do so, doesn't say it has to. So that I just wanted to clarify so folks would understand where you're headed with that. Michelle, same question to you about open government transparency. How would you rate how that's handled in the city? And if you're elected, what would you do to make sure that there's open government and transparency?
So I know that, the discussion has been had that the technology that we have in that building is not good enough, because even when you listen to some of the videos, it's kind of, you really can't hear when people are talking unless they're right up on the mic, and it's a little bit hard to hear. During the city talks with the mayor, you can hear him, but you can't really hear the people in the back. So I mean, I think definitely we have to start with, obviously, I mean, upgrading that system if we need to, because I think everybody, like Paula said, everybody should be able to listen, because again, we may have businesses, we may have kids activities, we may not be able to be at the meetings, but we should be able to listen. And I think there should also be opportunity for other people to be able to listen as well, in the apartment complexes and other areas, because at the end of the day, they're part of the city. And, I think that, I know we've had the issue with the transparency, like even like the last election when there were emails sent behind closed doors. And then, at the last city coffee with the mayor, people asked, well, when we send an email, do you get it? And apparently it goes to the Nassau Bay email, but then it gets forwarded to his personal email. And I just think that's a little odd. I just think that if you have a Nassau Bay email, you should be able to answer and respond from it, because that is a city assigned email to you. And that should be kind of the transparency. I think if it gets transferred to your personal email, who knows what happens after that. So, I just find that kind of odd. So I think that the transparency is a big issue. I know that there's a lot of communication that goes out there, but it just seems like people just talk in circles and nothing really gets down and clarified. And I think they call that transparency when it's really not. You're not answering any questions or getting to the point. You're just giving the people too much that they just don't even want to listen to anymore. So if I get elected, I would definitely try to, if they're not going to have transparency, you kind of hold like your own little town hall meetings and you communicate with everybody, just like what comes out of the meetings. I think that the minutes do need to be posted. I think that needs to be done in a timely manner. A lot of people look for that. And I think if you say you're going to do it, it needs to be done. I understand everybody gets busy, but if it's your job in City Hall, then that's just what you have to do. I mean, that's part of your job. That's part of what you're supposed to do. And I think you need to do that. So,
and to clarify a point that you made, Michelle, there about, forwarding something to an elected official's personal email. The way the law actually reads is that even though it's your personal email, it is at its core something you're doing government business on, and that's still subject to an open records request. The tough thing is enforcing that part of it.
Mm-hmm.
That becomes of that, because I know in many cities that happens. Sarah, same question to you about open government and transparency.
Yeah, I really don't have a whole lot to add. I mean, on top of what the other lady said, live streaming is really important. And for a while we were getting it right. I guess they were using Facebook or whatever to get it done, but it would be nice if we had a more stable connection and a way to reach people that was more stable than, a Facebook stream. So, also there is a lot done in that executive closed session that I think could probably be an open session. Of course, I don't know what's going on back there, but it seems like, the open session items, there's not a whole lot of them these days, and they do stay in closed session for a while. Like I said, I have no idea what's going on there. So they could be discussing all very, secret hush hush items. I have no idea. Right. And I don't know, are we going to talk, Paula kind of brought it up about, volunteers on committees.
Yeah, that's actually our next topic.
Okay, I'll let you
as well. Yeah, I know that's another hot button issue that we'll be getting on here in just a little bit. Did you have anything more on the open government and transparency?
No, I just think that we can do it better as far as the obviously we can get the live streaming figured out. And I just think, we're talking about our city. So the people deserve to know as much as we can give them. That's my personal opinion. So,
and Paula heard me mention this the other night at the CCISD candidate forum I hosted. I actually did research of the communities that we covered 2 years ago and timed it out and went over an entire year of, I would have been I went over 2019. So it wouldn't have a COVID effect here. 2019 meetings in our area. And I did this actually, much later, but that it showed that of all of our government bodies here, school boards were higher on average if they were separating them off, but that 40% of the time of meetings was spent in closed session versus the others. When you get to school boards, it's a lot higher. There's a lot more state regulations to that. And that's one of those issues that, folks talk about transparency, and trust me, there are things that you want to do behind closed doors, personnel matters, government deals, if you're going to buy land or something like that, those are totally acceptable in there, but there are those that it kind of goes to what you define it, and then the body itself sets its policies along the way there. Keeping it on open government and the like, there has been back and forth, and this gets in, I'm going to lead up into the overall volunteer groups thing, but we had essentially a mass exodus on one of the volunteer committees in town. And then and then just on the heels of that, where there's another group of volunteers that have been doing work, and I noted this earlier, Sarah, the work you're doing on the duck feeders and collecting money. It helps out there for the animal shelter in there through Canby, and so that was what one of the items on the special meeting Thursday was specifically about that. But in this one, we're back now to Paula. Now, I'm sorry, I'm going to get this one first on that. But let's just talk about the discourse that seems to have erupted here between volunteer groups. We had an en masse resignation of the promotion. I call it the promotions committee, but it's more than that. But that had happened here, but we've had some disgruntled things there. And when I'm asking this question about, what I'm going to ask it more along the lines, and let's not talk about, you can talk about a little bit of what's gone wrong, you think, but more of along the lines of how would you approach it if elected to council? And that would include, by the way, specifically of how much of a council member being a member of these committees too, of having some oversight or responsibility. And I'm talking about purely about the volunteer stuff, not talking about P&Z or those development that are actually really city committees. But Paul, to you first on that.
Let me begin by saying it saddens me. We have great volunteers in Nassau Bay. Many of them have been long-term volunteers. They are saddened by the way those issues happened. They were on a committee, then they weren't on a committee. There may be term limitations, maybe there weren't. And I that is not good. Whatever happened, and of course, we're not privy to that information, but whatever did happen, we're hearing it secondhand, and it still saddens me. It saddens me for the people that have been long-term volunteers, and we all know many of those names. I've watched them. I've lived in Nassau Bay since 1988. I know how hard volunteers work. We need to not only tell them how thankful we are that they're serving, we need to respect them. We need to respect their efforts. We need to respect the way we've always done things and how we train them if we want to do it differently. And so I think a lot of it is easily remedied by transparency. I think the word that you mentioned before was that may happen, that may be acceptable. However, just because it's acceptable or may happen doesn't mean that it should happen behind closed doors. Our committees need to diversify. I volunteered for a committee a while back, listed my expertise, didn't get chosen. I'd like to know who got chosen in my place, how they got chosen, what their timeline is for serving, and I'm sure so would everybody else. That's all part of the transparency and trust that we need. So I see both sides of the city, those that want to do things a little differently and those that have been long-term volunteers. And I don't think that division will be acceptable. So we need to work on that.
And on that note, and this is for everyone as we get around, feel free to address it when you want to on this round, but is that, you have volunteer by nature is that the committee kind of creates itself, it does that. But in many cases, the city over the years had defaulted to these committees, just kind of do their own thing. And there's some oversight that probably needs to be had because of liability issues and the like. But how would you see committees done? Would it be, okay, apply, we do that? Or should all committees that are considered volunteer go through Canby, for example? That, that's the agreement is between the city and that group. Because we see that in many communities too, where those groups have it like they'll work with the parks department or or those, and that's where it all happens. I just wanted to see if you give your take on that, and then I'm going to go to Michelle with the same question.
Well, I realize I have a lot to learn about the charter because I was not involved at that level. So I'm still learning, and there are things in our charter that tell us how to structure things. But again, I think there needs to be an open process at the very least. If volunteers want to volunteer and not have their names out there, if volunteers want to apply and not have their names out there, that's different. But I would like to see all committee members get told what the process is, the term, and then the council can, if it's a committee of volunteers, they can establish some expectations or some wishful thinking. But again, committees need to operate within themselves, in my opinion. We depend on them. They're certainly available in Nassau Bay, and they bring a wealth of knowledge in Nassau Bay.
And maybe an example of what you're pointing out there, one of the great volunteer turnouts that happens in the city is for the peninsula cleanup there. So there would be a committee in charge of organizing that in other events maybe. But then people who show up for the day are not, necessarily a committee or appointment. They're just showing up to work. So there's our two levels of volunteerism there.
Yes.
And we're talking more of in that structural
Yes.
tone. And that's the same question I wanted to go ahead and ask you now, Michelle, is that how, if you were elected, would you approach how the city works with these committees and how appointments would be made on some of these things? Should they be totally within their own, or should council have some say so they have some oversight where there's like an agreement in place or something? How would you approach it?
Well, I think that, city council, like somebody does maybe not necessarily govern the committee, but just oversee the committee so they can go back and report to the rest of city council what this committee is doing. They can be the voice back to city council. I think it's a shame as the city that we are, that we have these many issues with volunteers. I mean, you're volunteering, you're giving up your time. Whatever committee you volunteer for, I think there need to be some guidelines set. I mean, not everybody can just be let to do whatever they want to do. I understand that some people they have history in committees and things change, things evolve. What might have worked in the past may not work now. We do have a lot of younger families moving into into Nassau Bay, and we want to create and nourish those relationships because eventually they're going to be the ones that are going to be coming up and volunteering. And if you're already getting the taste in your mouth of like, oh my God, look at all that's going on with even trying to volunteer for the city, I don't want to be involved in that. Nobody wants to give up their time to be part of a committee that you're not going to be appreciated. Or at the end of the day, city council members going to come and completely say no. Or like Paula mentioned, she's got all the criteria to meet a specific position and she doesn't understand why she didn't get that. I mean, a courtesy call of like, hey, Paula, maybe this other person was better suited for that. I mean, at least let her know so she understands what she needs to do next time. But I think, like she said, I mean, volunteers are vital to the city, and we're very fortunate that we have so many people that want to volunteer. And I don't understand why the city council doesn't see that as an opportunity of rejoicing and coming together. And it just becomes this, drab chore, and they take over again. It's this taking over of city council over everything. I don't understand. I don't understand that. And there needs to be something for other people. Like kids want to volunteer at the cleaning up the peninsula. My husband and my child have done it. There's nothing wrong with that. You need to open yourself up for kids. That's also a learning opportunity. Take care of your streets, pick up the trash, take care of the planet. I mean, that's what we're here for. We want to take care of our city, and we need the committees to do it, and we need the volunteers to do it. And city council should only be a voice to communicate back to city council what that specific committee is doing. And the terms, I don't understand the term limit. We have people in city council, our lawyers, been here for 50 years. What kind of a term does he have? So there should be no terms. If you want to volunteer, you volunteer. So.
Yeah. And it goes into kind of the bigger topic of, when does council have oversight? Of course, there needs to be some because, again, as I mentioned, the liability issues. But when does council have oversight? When does council have say? Those are two different things in many ways. Sarah, same question to you. I know this is something that you've been experiencing on a multiple levels. here to give you a chance now to have
No.
your say. Remember, keep it around 2 minutes. You know, so.
Okay. I just want to read a part of our preamble in our charter. It says, effective government that protects individual freedom can best be achieved by encouraging and soliciting interest and participation by the citizens. And I think that's super important for this, what we're talking about right here. Recently they started putting, council decided they would start putting council members on all the committees. And, some of the committees have requirements that the committee members have to elect their own chairperson. Well, I don't remember in the Parks Committee that happening, but, I think it's a shame what happened to a lot of the volunteers. The Special Events Committee, I think that they had been operating so efficiently and well by themselves for a long time, and then they found some interference, and they were told to comply and do certain things, and they did those things. But I think they felt continued interference, and they felt, as you said, Michelle, when you're a volunteer, these things are close to your heart, and I think that makes it hurt even more when you're kind of told that what you're doing is incorrect or wrong, or it's okay if you have certain rules that you have to go by and you have to follow by those rules. I understand that, but if you're just feeling like belittled or devalued, then that's not good. A part of what makes communities so great are the volunteers, and I think we just need to realize that we need to have these council people have interaction with these committees, but they don't need to be taking over these committees. The committees should have input from citizens from all over the community with diverse backgrounds and educations. We have so many smart and educated and wonderful people in Nassau Bay that I just, my next door neighbor applied to be on the Special Events Committee, and she has a master's degree in education, and she was a educator for a long time and a diagnostician with Deer Park ISD. So she has the special education background, and she applied to be on the Special Events Committee, in October, and she was told she had to volunteer at an event. So she did. She volunteered at the Halloween in the park, and then she never heard from anybody. And then she read recently in Compass Rose that other people were appointed to the committee, and she wondered what happened. She sent me a text and said, why did this happen? I applied for the role. She's really great at planning parties. I mean, she would have been invaluable, and she was never contacted. And the people that were put on the Special Events Committee look like they were hand selected by council people. So, that's one of my platforms part of my platform is no more echo chamber. We need to have people from all over the city contributing to the city. And that's just kind of where I stand on that.
Yeah. And, one of the things that Michelle may have mentioned this earlier about kind of the change in the demographics of the city. I know since in the 5 years since I've moved here, I've seen the change in the demographics as well. And going on there, and you find out the great experience that folks have, and it's about finding a way maybe to get more people encouraged to participate. But when they see this rancor, it may not feel worth it. And again, we're trying to talk about more about the kind of committees, and that goes into, and just real quick, yes or no, and maybe a quick answer to that is, and I'll stay with you, Sarah, then to Michelle and to Paula on this one. Would you like to see, since Canby's kind of a collection, it is specifically a collection of all the associations in town, that maybe that organization, since it's independent, does its own thing, but still works in the city in partnership on stuff, be kind of the catch-all for the volunteer committees and has an agreement with the city that works out, is kind of that single entity, because Canby does a lot already that work with. Would that be something that you'd encourage, or
I can't really speak for Canby because it's a board of people, right? So, but I know that Canby has contributed a great amount to the city over the years, and I think it's a really great group because it's a nonprofit. Canby can throw a party, and the city really has to not send any resources. and then they get the money from it. And I think, they did the dog park, the shades in the park, and it's just why you would want to push a group like that away. I just can't understand. I mean, it's honestly volunteerism at its best. And I don't understand it. It's like, it's a gift. And I think you should accept it and say thank you.
Gotcha. Michelle, same question to you.
I mean, I agree with what Sarah is saying. Again, you're a volunteer, you're giving your time to the city, and the fact that we're able to be rewarded from it, I mean, I think it's a great thing. And I just don't understand unless city council is going to get out there and do everything themselves and not need anybody to do anything, I just don't understand how the city can survive with a mentality like that, to be honest with you. I mean, you're pushing people away that could really, really help, whether they have the background or not the background. I mean, if somebody wants to volunteer, you got to find a spot for them because they have something to give. And it's a big thing, it's just like when you have your school PTA, you have a PTA, but then you have other committees underneath that plan other events and take over different things. I mean, you can't do it all yourself. You got to be able to divide and conquer, but at the end of the day, just do good for the city.
Paula, same question for you.
It's difficult to get a 501c3 designation. Canby did it. They are there for us. I probably have some of the first number of bricks that can be sold way back from the beginning. I don't know where they are. I don't even remember because it's been so many years. So I know the long-term history of Canby. I know what they're willing to do. I know some of the Canby volunteers that have passed away and done great things. So I think, again, we should recognize what they can do. Does every committee need to be structured like Canby? Canby does handle money. They do need to follow certain procedures. But so does the person who's doing the egg hunt. Do we need to know who's putting the eggs out? No. So structures need to be different for our different committees. I understand that, but all the issues can be open. People should be able to be volunteers, and maybe they don't want to be a committee member. Committee members for some types of committees have to be held to a higher standard. We have to follow that. But the fact that Canby is a 501c3 and it's held that designation for a long time, the city needs to respect it and take advantage of it.
In fact, I was looking at their Facebook page when we brought it up, and I'm not to give any favor here or anything like that, but I'm watching the wild collection of ducks and all hanging around the feeder here posted 5 days ago, and that we see that all the time. Is that we have fun with it because we use the same exact feed when we go out in our golf cart around there. It's kind of a fun thing, and that's a Canby / and I know Sarah puts in so much work on that as well. And not to take away from anyone else's volunteer efforts. I know I see Michelle out a lot and Paula as well doing things in the city. But let's get now to kind of one of the most basic things of government. It's infrastructure. And forgive me, ladies, obviously I thought, we'd do this for 45 minutes and move on. We've kept going, so I'm gonna get a few more questions in before we get to closing, if that's all right with all three of you here. I don't want to take away too much time. I may be helping Michelle avoid cleaning up from her twin granddaughter's birthday party from earlier today. So you can use that as an excuse if you want. But we have seen a massive. If there's one positive that come out of everything, it has been the management of and the handling of an infrastructure, massive infrastructure project where the new water lines are getting installed across the city. A lot of that work's gotten done. It's been done efficiently, thanks to the Public Works Department and their contractors that worked on that project. So that, if anything, has been remarkable when you talk about the aging infrastructure here. That basically the only downside of that is every time they'd fix something on one end of town and get the new stuff in, the old stuff would blow out somewhere else down the line. But now most of that's done. A lot of our roads have been repaired and the like as well. But what do you see as the next big infrastructure concern that the city needs to address and goes along that way? And Michelle, we're back to you for to start off the answer of this question.
Well, I just want to say that I do agree with you. I mean, I think a lot of things have been done, which is great. When I ran last year, one of my biggest things was, again, walking the streets and, Upper Bay Road, people speeding all the time where your kids are not even safe riding their bikes or anything like that. I have noticed that, when you're going from, the gas station, I think it's like on Upper Bay Road, and you're kind of traveling through, to the apartments, like there's no sidewalks. So a lot of people are walking on the street, but we are still just having people like speed so fast through there. I know last time I was proposing like speed bumps, and everybody was like, no, because the emergency vehicles and the buses, they don't think
I'm the one that brought that up. I should point
yes,
out.
yes. And I understand that too, but at the same time, we have to create a safe environment for people to be able to walk freely and not worry about it. I understand. Listen, the neighborhoods all of them don't need sidewalks. Some of the streets are wide enough. I totally get that. But there's some parts that you kind of feel like you do need something just to walk from one side to the other. Because if not, you're just going to get run over and hit because people are not following the speed limit that we have in Nassau Bay. So to me, that's a big thing next to the water sewage lines and everything else that's been repaired. I think that's kind of a big thing for me personally. So
Sarah, same question to you about what, and you can comment on the work that just got done, but what do you see as an infrastructure priority?
I think that, council has actually come up with a pretty comprehensive plan on what they want to do. And they have it's laid out, they have to lay out their budget 5 years in advance, or their plan 5 years in advance. And honestly, I do not have a complaint about what they've been doing. We are in an old city, and we have the challenges that come with being in an old city, and it's the part of the charm of the city that I love. But we all have to deal with these busted pipes and water being shut off on occasion. But I think that honestly, I do not have a complaint about what we've been doing. It is not immediate. It is progress. And we just have to be patient and realize it's probably a step-by-step process. And there's been some talk about fiber optic and things like that. And it would be nice if we could pull that off. But I think there are it's an expense, and there's also finding somebody to come do it. I'm sure TJ has a special thoughts about that, being in the media business. Yeah,
there's times I want the internet to be a lot faster. Yeah, I agree with you.
So honestly, but I think honestly, if I can say one thing about what's been going on, I think that the last few councils have really done a good job of making sure that we are bringing our city as far as we can into, having good pipes and, that kind of stuff. So I think we're in the right direction. We just need to keep continuing and stay on our plan, going down the road.
All right.
One
baby around me.
Here, put the other one on my lap. One
baby.
Sarah,
your husband can let the kids in now.
Here's the other one. Say bye-bye. Bye. Say bye.
Bye.
No one accuses us of setting us up to get extra votes for Michelle.
Yeah,
the best campaigners are always the kids.
Bye-bye. I love you.
That was cute.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
That
Sorry.
They're
saying bye.
That's awesome. Paula, same question to you.
Infrastructure is critical. If you don't maintain it, it's costly. It upsets the community because we have backups. We still have a long way to go on our physical infrastructure. When I look at the sewer that needs to be updated, that's certainly an issue. I worry about technology infrastructure. I think that's critical. It's critical for the safety of our police force. It's critical for what we know and understand about our city. It's critical for people that come into our city, whether they're coming in as we would want them to come in and enjoy our city, or sometimes they're not coming in for those particular reasons. So we do need good infrastructure, whether it's pipes, technology, police, vehicles. That's all part of it. And I do know from serving on the CCIST board, if you take care of those issues on a daily basis and don't let them become 50-year-old issues, then it's much less expensive. And we all want to know that our tax rate is going to go down. FEMA
Right.
has requirements. We need to take care of those infrastructure issues to make sure that we're doing the right thing with building codes. So sometimes it's personnel that we need for enforcement, but we do need to maintain our infrastructure on a daily basis. And it's going to be ongoing with the businesses coming in and the development that's going to happen. Those infrastructure requirements are going to change.
And on a kind of as we talk about that type of infrastructure, let's get into another one, which is code enforcement. And there's two levels of code enforcement in Nassau Bay that I hear the most from residents here. And obviously, some have made some headlines about, houses that have not been updated or that have been vacant for a while, and then the legal actions that come with those. There seems some resolution on a couple of the bigger problem childs, but then there's also about on the apartments is that when the city tries to regulate on those, that there's pushback and more state laws get put in, and that becomes an issue. So Sarah, this is going to start with you. Just, where do you see the city's role of improving its code enforcement? And it's always a balance of, all right, do what's best for the city to make things look well and keep things straight. But then you don't want to go too far and punish someone who's just trying to get by sometimes from there. But let's start with you on that. And then you can also, if you wouldn't mind, also addressing the issues, because we do have some trouble, multi-house units or apartments, whatever you want to call it by its official name, that have become some major issues in this community.
Yeah, I was going to start off with the apartments discussion, because I know that there are some apartment complexes that have had some repeat floods, and there's concern about mold and the living conditions of the people in those apartments. And I think it goes back to kind of our personnel issue. We've lost some building officials recently. So it really hasn't just been the fallout of the city manager, losing city managers. Lost city secretary, lost a city finance director, lost 2 building officials, and this backs us up as far as being able to enforce code, make sure that local that the local apartments are following code. And I know it's because we're in this unique situation where we've dealt with flood events and things like that. A lot of other neighborhoods haven't had to deal with that, so we're probably a little more backlogged than other areas. But we've got to do something. We've got to hire people, and we've got to just get out there and start issuing citations and holding the apartment complexes, responsible for just for being in violation. And kind of on a, I don't even know if this is what you were meaning to get into, but Michelle touched on it earlier. Speeding is a huge issue on Upper Bay Road, and this is just getting into police enforcement, but
it's a combination infrastructure. If the speeding is an issue, do you build
right? And I just think there's some neighborhoods in off NASA 1 that you drive in and you're going to go 15 miles an hour throughout that whole neighborhood, because if you don't, you're going to have a police officer right behind you. And I think we all know which neighborhoods those are. And I don't mind being that neighborhood. I wouldn't mind if somebody, if they just issue tickets left and right down Upper Bay Road for 6 months. I guarantee you that would have an effect on speeding down Upper Bay Road. And I live on Point Lookout, so there is a little bit of an issue on Point Lookout too, especially on the front end of Point Lookout. And my kids will play on the street, and we're kind of after a corner, so I have to kind of jump out every now and then. And so, like I said, I think if they were just totally to hand out tickets left and right, and a lot of it is the people going to the park. They might not even live in Nassau Bay. And it's Upper Bay is kind of like a highway. It's just really wide. And maybe people get distracted looking at that pretty water, but they tend to have a lead foot. So that is another thing that I think needs some focus. But yes, obviously I'm kind of being a former prosecutor. I like code.
Yeah, I got you.
Enforcing it too.
Gotcha. Paula, same question to you. I'm going to come back around. Go ahead and add about, since Sarah brought it up about along traffic and traffic enforcement. I'll get Michelle on that specifically on the police end of that question for you as well. But Paula, you up next first.
Code enforcement for me is a safety issue and a quality of life issue for Nassau Bay residents. We deserve the best, and we need staff that can enforce code enforcement. We need to have staff that know what codes are being violated and whose responsibility it is to check on it, whether it's speeding, which I think we all worry about, but it's also about how we construct in Nassau Bay. FEMA is closely watching Nassau Bay. They are involved in the elevation, so there's some less concern for those issues of meeting FEMA requirements. But if we don't meet FEMA requirements when we build or construct, the whole city can lose its flood insurance. That's critical for the city. We're working on lowering our cost of flood insurance, so we need to be ever watchful of what's going on with flood issues. Everybody deserves a safe home. If we have homes in Nassau Bay, whether they're townhouses, condos, apartments, the people that live there deserve a safe and healthy environment, and codes are the way to get to those issues. So I probably stepped in because of code enforcement. I made an assumption that when the house being built next to me would follow all the Nassau Bay rules, and when I found out that the dock was built in violation of every rule, I got involved, had difficulty getting my questions answered, filed open record requests to get my questions answered. And so I think we have a right to know. And I decided to sign up on the very last day because of code enforcement. So again, if our code says we measure a building from the ground floor, the ground up, that's what we need to do. And I don't know why all of those things aren't being followed, but they're not. And I understand there have been many changes in the building department. It definitely concerns me. And I think the police officers have a lot to do. We can't be charging them with every job that we want done in the city. So I do have some concern about how we hire employees and what our expectations are for those employees and what we provide them with for completing their jobs successfully. And code enforcement is definitely important for Nassau Bay.
And since Sarah brought it up, let's talk about traffic enforcement, particularly on, I've heard both Nassau Bay Drive and Upper Bay and Point Lookout is referred to as speedways at times. And I know we have but how would you address those issues in town? Paula?
I think we need enforcement. I think we have people crossing through Nassau Bay, crossing through our parking lots and our businesses just to get to a place faster. I don't think that that's acceptable. It's not safe for our children. So I think we need staff that can actually monitor. And there are machines. That's the good thing about machines. It can tell you how fast you're going. And I know there's a big controversy about traffic lights and cameras on traffic lights, but we need to keep our kids safe. And if speeding traffic is an issue in the city, we definitely need to do something about it. And my kids were 1, 3, and 5 when we moved into Nassau Bay. So I've seen a lot of changes. And I think that our kids, first and foremost, grandkids, my daughter just moved into the city, they need to be safe. Excuse me. So I think we need to do all that we can. But again, I think we can't say to our few employees, you got to do it all. We got to figure out a process for getting it done.
Does spread them thin. Michelle, give a chance to add on to the part about, traffic enforcement in particular. I know you talked about the sidewalks, but should there be more done about traffic enforcement, changing of the speed limits, maybe even, or heftier fines for those areas, not the side streets so much, but as Upper Bay, Nassau Bay Drive, Point Lookout?
I mean, yeah, I brought it up last year. I think I just agreed. I think that maybe more tickets should be given out. I think heftier fines should be given out because, I mean, it's a beautiful drive. It's around the parks and we want to keep our kids protected. I want to be able to ride my bike with my kids and not worry about, somebody going fast down the street. But at the same time, if I ride my bike down the wrong side of the street, the policeman's going to stop me and say, hey, you're on the wrong side of the street, because that has happened to me. So I just want to make sure that, that we protect the kids more than anything else. And I mean, as far as, and I want to go back to the apartments because the apartments are a big thing for me.
Sure.
So listen, I know I don't want any more apartments. I totally get it. Just like I don't want any Airbnbs. I get that too. But we have the apartment complexes and we need to keep them up because they're the entrance. I mean, when you come into the city, the first thing you see is the apartment. So if you're just going to forget that the apartments are even there, I mean, they're never going to be torn down more than likely. So we really do need to enforce that code to keep the apartments up and going. And we need to make them beautiful because they're the first thing that people see when they come into Nassau Bay. So we can completely disregard the apartments because they're part of the city. And I just wanted to kind of bring that up. And I know that's been brought up before. And I know some things were improved on. I don't know how everything was left off after that. I didn't know about the business manager changes or anything like that. So I'm just not as educated in that regard. But again, we need to work with the apartments because we see the apartments every day. So, and they're not going away, but I don't want any more. And as far as like the houses, I know some of the houses that were falling apart. I think the May house, I know that there've been some things done to it. I know it's not completely up to code still, or I think they're still waiting for some permits. I know that was something that the mayor talked at his last city talk. Yeah. He did mention about some of the improvements, which is great. I mean, we're moving in the right direction, but I think it just needs to move a little bit quicker at this point. I mean, it's been so long and it's taken so long to kind of take action on that. And nobody wants to see that in the neighborhood. So.
Yeah, and at least in the May Jameson house, as it's referred to many times,
yes,
there's a deadline for once they started the work or when it has to be done, and there's not much of a give and take on that. Last question here, and it's because Michelle brought it up, and it's a good topic, and I know it's one that many people talk about. So we'll start with you on this one, Michelle. You mentioned it, short-term rentals. And this is a battle in many towns across Texas right now, and there's a lot of cities feel that they're hamstrung on this. And you have cities like Galveston who in many ways encourage it because they're a tourism town. Obviously Nassau Bay is in itself, even though the lake is here and stuff like that, is not set up to be a tourist community, even though we're right across the street from the biggest tourist attraction in the entire region here. So Michelle, just talk about STRs, or short-term rentals as it's referred to, Airbnb, VRBOs. I mean, people have different names for everything that's there. Of what is your stance and what you think can be done, and what would you prefer to be seen done in Nassau Bay?
I mean, listen, when you're talking about short-term rentals or rental homes, I mean, that's, somebody it's, trying to make that additional income on the side or do something like that. I don't specifically agree with the short-term rentals. I mean, I think they've gone, the ones that I know of, kind of got out of control, and, they don't have no boundaries were set, there were younger kids enjoying the Airbnb or the short-term rental. And I think it's not regulated enough. We don't have the personnel for that. And I don't think it's something that we need to do. And I mean, if somebody wants to earn income in that regard, they need to go somewhere else, because this is not the place to do it. I mean, you want to go see Space Center Houston, get a hotel room, I mean.
Right there, right?
So I mean, it's right there across the street. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. So, but I don't want any more short-term rentals. I don't want any more apartments. I just want to keep up with what we have, and that's it. We don't have any room for that. So,
gotcha. Sarah, same question to you on STRs.
Yeah, I mean, because I live here and I plan on my husband burying me in the backyard, I'm not really a big fan of STRs either.
Wait, since you said that, you broke news here. That's not going to happen anytime soon, right?
I think STRs are not my favorite thing. Now, I think there are some areas that they manage it by making the minimum stay a week or more. And that makes you have like maybe a family that comes and stays to get together with other family. And it's a more respectful use of a short-term rental. Or there's these rules about music can't be played after 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock or whatever. There are ways to manage it. I'm just not wild about them myself.
Yeah.
This is a community.
If you own the property, you kind of like it. If you don't,
right.
Particularly if you're a neighbor,
and I talked to a voter.
House. Yep.
Yeah, I talked to a voter the other day that asked me explicitly, how do you feel about STRs? And I said, I'm just not a big fan. I live here with my kids, and There was a house across the lake that they had some parties, and they even I guess we're shooting a video and threw a counter did you know about this, TJ?
Yeah.
They threw money out the windows as a part of their video they were making. And then the police went up to them and said, you have to pick up every single shred of that money you threw out the window. So I
happened to be behind them when they were doing that. Actually.
Oh, okay. Well, there you go. So it's a bit of it's a concern that people come there and just have a big party and make a bunch of noise and then leave. And, so that's my concern there. But like I said, I think if they were to allow it in the city, there is a way to make it so that it's only a respectful use of the STR is what I should say.
Gotcha. Paula, same question to you, and we'll wrap things up with your closing statements after this.
There are a lot of regulations in the city about those kinds of opportunities. I was at a meeting where I heard a council member say that there are 115 or 120 in the city. 10 may be registered. The apartments, heard that they don't allow it according to their original lease, but people that lease in the apartments then are turning them into Airbnbs or whatever. So there's lots of opportunities to get a handle on it, get a control on it, and not let it continue, especially in the wrong way. I've owned property in places where they try to have a wedding every weekend next to you. Well, that's not good for a property owner that lives next door. It has to put up with 150 guests and the parking issues and the music that go along with it. So I'm really concerned, but I'm also want to say that apartments are wonderful for the people that need it. They deserve to have a safe place. But when apartments are not maintained and outlive their usefulness, they need to be gone. And we have difficulty doing eminent domain. I understand that. It can be costly. We don't want to do that. But if we're enforcing code and the apartment refuses to maintain itself, do diligence, then we have a city requirement to do something about it. And so I think, and I live across from an apartment complex here in Swan Lagoon, pretty close. And, when they have outlived their usefulness, maybe it's time to tear them down. But again, the pathway to doing that is a legal pathway. They have to be very careful as a city to follow that. We have to have an attorney that understands it, and we have to do due diligence. So again, I would prefer that maybe we don't have as many as we do, but if we do have any, they need to be regulated, and the enforcement of those regulations is critical.
And again, you brought up a good point, folks. For some folks, a house is not the way to go. Right. So they'll, go to a multifamily unit, and there's those that are nice, like Voyager, versus the others that are run down. The tough thing for many cities on regulating on code enforcement with apartments, and we should point out that most of the complaints about the apartments, not necessarily from residents in the community, but residents of the apartments themselves, coming to the city and showing what they're going through. Bringing in filters that are just, clogged up, and mold they've cut out of their walls and the like, and not getting a reaction to. But, and I'm going to name them this time. I didn't do this a year ago, as Michelle, remember when I brought this up. Should point out that State Representative Briscoe Kane, who represents up a little bit further, but Clear Lake area, writes a lot of the legislation that gives protections to these apartment complexes. At the same time, he's the lawyer for many of these apartment complexes and ownerships, and owns several himself. So you have a chairman of a committee who's at the same time writing regulations that, that lessens it from the city government side of things. That's also an ownership and I'm just pointing that fact. There's no doubt about that. That's happening. That's a fact. So that doesn't mean it's good or bad. Just that's what's happening. So that makes it tough for the city. And I know this city particularly dealt with it. We've gone, almost 90 minutes, and I thank you all three for hanging out with us for that. As those who saw live when we started off, we had a random pick of who would go first, second, or third with their closing statements. You can go up to 3 minutes. All we ask is you just keep it up about what your campaign is. This is a disclaimer. We tell everyone, don't go after your opponent, because then I'm gonna have to give them time, and then we're going to go back and forth on that. So, but based on that drawing, Michelle, you get to go first, and you have up to 3 minutes, man.
Well, I want to thank you again for having us here today. I want to thank the rest of the ladies for appearing, and I want to wish them luck because we are all in this journey together. My main concern again is I just want to have a voice for all the people. I just want to be somebody different in city council if I get elected. I'm just tired of the recycling of the clients over and over again, and the power that certain city council members and their families have over this entire city. I think that there needs to be new voices, new blood, and different perspectives. I think that we can all work together to make the city a better place. I just want to make sure that even the young families moving in find the city of Nassau Bay attractive like I do. I want to create a safe environment for our children. I love the city and everything that it brings, but the last couple of years, I've just noticed so much turmoil that it just breaks my heart. For being, I just love when people tell me, but we're such a close-knit community, but we're not. We're really not. There's like clusters of people that are close-knit, but the rest of the people are left out. And I understand what Paula's saying about the enforcing of the codes in the apartments. But again, until we can get that done, we just got to make sure, like she mentioned before, that people are living in a healthy environment. And, because at the end of the day, they could be there just to try to buy a house in Nassau Bay. You never know what their reasoning is for being in the apartment or what's going on with them, where they're waiting on a transfer from Nassau or something similar to that. So I just want to make sure that we can all work together, that everybody can volunteer and they can do whatever they want to do for the city. Those are basically my main concerns. It's just a transparency. I want to be just a new voice with a new perspective. And I just want to be given a chance. Even when I applied for this position, I got text messages like, are you sure you want to run for that position? I'm like, why not? Do you pay my mortgage? Do you pay my property taxes? No. So I should be able to decide when I want to run and what position I want to run for. I shouldn't have to, pick a different position because you feel like I should not run against a person in a particular position. I don't like to be told what to do. And I'm a citizen of Nassau Bay like anybody else. And I pay my taxes, and I just want an opportunity to serve the people. That's what I want. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much. Sarah, up to 3 minutes for you.
Okay, well, I just wanted to thank you first because, doing this forum, this is a part of the transparency that we're talking about, and the part of just letting us have our voices heard, letting us tell you everything that we're all about, and you asking us questions directly and us answering them. So I really appreciate you giving us a platform to be able to do that. We at the beginning of this, we talked a lot about kind of the negative things going on in Nassau Bay. And I want to say, first of all, Nassau Bay is a wonderful city, and I love it, and I want to raise my kids here, and I plan to be here for the long haul, like I said earlier. And I wouldn't be running for this position if I didn't feel, a great amount of passion for this city and a love for the people that live in it. And so, that's why I'm here running. And that's why I'm here even in, participating in this forum when my opponent decided not to. I just ask that you in my race look at the qualifications of the candidates side by side, and that you make an informed decision when you go into the voting booth. I'm a former prosecutor. I'm an attorney. I have 3 kids, young children. I'm a young mother. I think that I could add a great amount of value to council. And I have, an independent voice and independent thoughts. And I will listen to all sides, and I will make a decision on what's best for the city. And not according to what one person tells me or what another person tells me. I will always go with what I think is best for the city. So I just ask that you guys inform yourselves and make the best decision for the city. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Paula, up to 3 minutes for you, ma'am.
Well, thank you again for doing this. I know you're going to tell us afterwards where everybody can see this video, because that's the whole point of it. So I appreciate that, and thank you again. I have been in the city, built our first house in 1988. So I did raise my children here. I served on the Nassau Bay committees very early on. I was PTA president at McWhirter a number of times. And at that point in time, there were 1,400 children at that school. And the apartments all over from 2351 all the way down to Nassau Bay came to those apartments. And the one thing I used to say to my friends on the committees and at McWhirter is, if something happens in your family, a medical issue for your spouse or a divorce, where are you going to be? Can you keep your big house? No, you're most likely going to be in an apartment. And those people deserve to have safe and comfortable environments, just like the rest of us, whether it's a townhouse or an apartment or a home. So I understand the difficulty that we have with apartments, but I will do my best. I will listen to both sides. I really hope to be unifying in this city, because that's important to me. Unification through trust and transparency is what the city needs. And so I would like to do that. I will admit that the last 10 years, there's been some health issues and some family issues, and I haven't been involved in the city as much as I should have been, certainly voted, but I'm willing to jump back in, learn more of what's happening, the issues facing the city, what's going on with personnel, our difficulties. So although I'm not a new person in Nassau Bay, I'm kind of an old person, but the one thing I can say is I will be a free and independent thinker, and I will do what I feel is right for the city, for the residents, and all residents. So I'm looking forward to serving. I know we have things ahead of us that are going to be difficult, but I also know that my children have taken full advantage of everything the city has to offer. My girls swam starting at 5, and they actually swam for Nassau Bay Naughty Cats all through high school. I probably worked the ready area for 10 years at the pool. So I've done a lot of things, and I have a lot of concerns, but I do see young people moving in, my daughter and my 2 grandsons and her husband. So I want to encourage that. I want to listen to that platform. It's different than the old timers platform, and all platforms are important. So I plan to listen. I've tried to tell people I'm open, I'm available. I have created a Facebook page, Paula Tomasi, for Nassau Bay City Council. I'm certainly willing to have you ask me questions on my my personal email, since I don't have a city email. But I'm going to try to do the best I can if I get elected and listen to all sides. But we do desperately need unification. And that's one of the big things I'm in favor of. Not necessarily following up and doing what everybody says, but we need to have the confidence of our citizens that we are listening, that we are talking in front of them, that we are making decisions in front of them, and that our decisions are for the good of all people in the city of Nassau Bay. Volunteers, employees, council members, and businesses. We need to have
10 seconds.
Awareness of good businesses, and we need to keep them here, and we need to support them, and we need to give our staff the numbers that they need to do their job.
Thank you all for
Thank
being
you.
a part of this here tonight. I do appreciate it. Since this wasn't a question to come, but I just thought it, Jenny Ann had pointed out, she appreciated the 3 of you being willing to participate in this forum, so that those who can't make it out to your meet and greets can hear your thoughts. So we appreciate that, as you can tell right off the bat. And that's, by the way, I had to look closely. I wanted to make sure that's her dog, I'm thinking, in her I started to say, what is that? And then I realized that's the dog's tongue the whole time. So and that's it. And again, Sarah was talking about her kiddos later. They know how to hook me every time I come around the corner. Sarah lives around the corner from me. And they got the lemonade and cookies, and they know I'm going to pull over every single time out there. I'm either going to bring duck food or stop for there for it.
Oh yeah, when I had my lemonade stand campaign event, I had to explain to them, I cannot accept money for this lemonade.
I was willing to pay. I told the kid.
We were so disappointed, but
They usually make a killing off of me. I buy at least 3 or 4 boxes there. But thank you all for being a part of this here tonight. For those of you that tomorrow starts early voting, to find the polling locations, harrisvotes.com. The hours. Harris County is a vote at any poll location county. So even though you live in Nassau Bay, you don't have to vote in the Clear Lake area. You could be somewhere else in Harris County where there's a polling location. Just make sure you have your photo ID, and they can get you signed up for that. Early voting goes through this week, then May 1st and 2nd. There's no weekend voting in Harris County. And then May 6th is election day. A reminder for those of you who are watching here, we have 2 more forums happening live tomorrow night. The Lamarck City Council and College of the Mainland Trustee forums that are happening tomorrow. We'll be at the Texas City Lamarck Chamber of Commerce office in person for that, plus streaming at 9702 EF Lowry Expressway. And then tomorrow morning, bright and early at 7 a.m., before you get to go to the polls, we're going to play back our Clear Creek ISD forum that I did Thursday night with the Republican Network. They invited us out, and normally I don't do with a partisan group setup, but they said what my rule always is: I get to ask the questions. No one tells me what questions to ask from that, which is always my rule in those. And they allowed that. And I think we had a very good discussion there. So we'll have that 7 a.m. Tomorrow morning for everyone to watch. Thank you all for being on with us here tonight. I do appreciate. I always tell folks, I said, appreciate no matter who's running, that they've taken the time to do this, as you've given up a lot of your lives the last several weeks. And as I always tell folks, you only got 2 weeks left until you get to sleep in on the 7th of May from there. Except Sarah's husband, who's got to go out and get all of her signs up the next day. Although, Michelle, you got your grandkids; they're old enough, right? They can go do that now. But and as I said, Paula, you got your family just moved into town, so they can go and get your side today. Anyway, I'm just teasing about that.
Yes.
Thank you all for being a part of this tonight. Thanks for the lively discussion. And Paula mentioned that we've been having this live, but the moment I sign off here, it's available for replay, so you can go back through and listen to that and share it with your friends here on I-45 Now. Thank you all for being a part of this. I'm TJ Alts, I-45 Now.